So, saw an old friend of Dad's today, and he reminded me of how Dad would say certain words certain
Hmm.
ways. And he was telling Dad how World Class was going on tour. This was the Von Erichs Over America tour in 1987, and he goes, I always loved how your dad. I paraphrase. I'm not. He said, I always remember how your dad would say, "We're going on tour."
Hmm.
TUR. And a lot of people talk about how Dad would call Ric Flair
Ricky
Ricky
Flair and
Flair.
Sting, the Sting.
Yeah. So, any other phrases you remembered? How he would say root beer
Root beer.
instead of root beer.
If you're going to refer to Alice Cooper, it'd be Alice Cooper.
Yeah.
Who else would be like? There were certain guys. Sometimes he would, or like if we were going to be at the arena in Orlando, it'd be we're at the arena in Orlando.
Yeah.
Just be certain way. Now, I think some of it was a shoot because our Aunt Norma, she would say certain things and she would sound exactly like that with the same type of diction. Now, as far as like the brother and the Ricky Flair, that was all kind of jive talking, kind of how he really was. But as far as certain things, he just couldn't say.
Right. Well, Dad had dyslexia. I don't know if he talked about that in the book.
Not very much, but
So
he said because that's why his punches look so good because he was left-handed.
Yeah, I don't know if that has anything to do with
it. It might have. I mean, because his handwriting was pretty clean for someone who had dyslexia.
You were telling a funny story. Maybe we can end with this. Is about where Humpy lived in Charlotte, and about this isn't how he is. But go ahead. You were telling me that story.
There was an apartment complex. I don't know if it's still there anymore. It was called Strawberry Fields. Was the name of it was Strawberry Hill.
Right.
Was the name of the apartment complex. And so Dad called
and Humpy lived there.
Humpy lived there. Dad always called it Strawberry Fields.
And it was
Strawberry Hill.
Was the real name.
Yeah, it was the real name. Dad called it Strawberry Fields. So years later, when I saw Hump, I was like, wasn't it an apartment complex you lived over there? It had the jacuzzi. I think it was called Strawberry Fields. When Hump goes, no, it was Strawberry Hill. I think he just liked the name. So he would change certain
Meaning
little things.
Dad liked this name, Strawberry Fields, so he just called it Strawberry Fields instead of calling it the right name.
Yeah, like he liked Brett Favre, but he'd never called him Brett Favre. He called him Bart Favre because it sounded like Bart Starr and Brett Favre. And Michael Irvin was Michael Irving. He would just throw certain things on, just sort of like to make it his. But a lot of the jive talking, that was pretty much him. He would sometimes exaggerate it, but like the Sting and Ricky Flair and Jimmy Cornette, because he couldn't say Cornette, Jimmy Cornette. So he would, and like Cornette was saying, Dad would say, he wouldn't say corn, he'd say corn. Say Dad would be walking around the dressing room with a bag of popcorn. Corn? Want some corn, brother? Because it's like kind of like that Chicago, corn, brother. It's you, brother. Ask Bill Apter. He can do a few impressions, and he can, give you the proper diction.